Okay, so we're back. So moving on to look at a different model, here's Harold Lasswell's model, and you can see his formula model actually dates from 1948. So this is not something recent at all, but the different areas that he covers when looking at communication are still valid now, and we'll see that in a moment. So this is a very simple outline of how Lasswell's model works. As you can see, we've got the first bit, which is the control study. So who is it? Who is the communicator? What do they say? What's their message? That's content analysis. In which channel do they say this? So what's the medium? So this is media analysis. Who are they saying it to? The receiver, or audience analysis. And then with what effect? So what is the effect here? And we can do effect analysis. So very simple, very straightforward, and works ideally across lots of different type of media, but even digital media, despite Lasswell having sort of produced this long before digital media was ever invented. So we can look at this tweet from Donald Trump from 2017. So it's as I said, it's from Twitter, and we can look at who is the person saying this. So we've got at the top there Donald Trump, and we can also look at things like the fact that he has a blue tick there, or a blue circle with a white tick in it. And we've got a name, Donald J. Trump, but we've also got underneath the username at real Donald Trump, all as one word. So that would perhaps begin to tell us that this is Twitter. We've also got over on the right there, follow, and this is us obviously thinking about which channel. This is Twitter. What does that mean? The idea of having a username and a screen name, and how they can both be the same, or they can both be different from one another, and we can have a message going on in the screen name and in our username, as people do, but equally we can use real names. So the channel itself is very important here. What does Twitter do? And Twitter, of course, used to have a limit on the number of characters that you could use. So it used to be 140 characters. It's now 280. So it's possible to actually put more text in now, but I think this was from when it used to be 140, but I could be wrong. And then, what's the content? So what do they say? And who do they say it to? So what do they say? And in this first one, we've got Senator Bob Corker begged me to endorse him for re-election in Tennessee. I said no, and he dropped out, said he could not win without. And then, of course, it goes on to the next one, my endorsement. And we'll look at the next one in a second. So that's what he's saying. And we could look at that for things like how the sentences are being constructed. We could look at the use of the quotation marks there. So we've got begged in quotations, and we've also got no in quotations. And we could also look at why no is in capital letters. And we've also got the opening of a parenthesis, the bracket there, which then closes in the following bracket. We could compare this tweet to more recent tweets of Donald Trump's or other tweets of Donald Trump's, and compare the language construction, the way that this tweet has been put together, the type of language used, the type of, I've forgotten the word now. Well, that's embarrassing, doing a recording, but I'm going to keep on. We could look at the punctuation, that's the word. So we could also look at the punctuation and see if that changes as well. So, these are the sorts of things that forensic linguistics look at. And, that they will actually begin to look very closely at how people put together sentences, the type of punctuation they favour. We've got an ellipse at the end of that first tweet. Is that something that Donald Trump regularly uses? Or is this something that Donald Trump has dictated to, you know, an assistant, or is it something that a White House assistant has actually tweeted? And, you know, we know that this does happen, that not all of Donald Trump's tweets are directly from him. And in fact, you know, we looked at one last week, the Covfefe tweet. So, you know, this, and I talked a little bit last week about how we could begin to analyse it, but using Lasswell's model, or any of the models that we're looking at today, would help us to really begin to go through it logically, analytically, and to be able to say, this is the method that I've used. And we can then, of course, use that same method to compare further tweets from Donald Trump or tweets from somebody else. You know, so it's a very sort of simple, straightforward, reliable method. So who does he say this to? And we can then look at the numbers that appear along the bottom there. So obviously we've got the date and time, but below that we've got the details that over 23,000 people replied, over 13,000 retweeted this message, and over nearly 58,000 people liked this message. So we could look at two things with who he's saying this to. We could look at who his followers are, because they of course are going to see his tweets automatically, but we could also look at who's retweeting it, because then in turn their followers will see it even if they're not following Donald Trump. We could look at who has responded, because again, the followers of the people who have replied will get to see this. And of course, we could look at the people that liked this, because it could be that, you know, there is a crossover here between the people that replied, the people that retweeted, his followers, and so on. So, you know, we can get a really good idea of exactly who his audience is. And, you know, we know it's Donald Trump, so of course his audience is the entire world. But, you know, if it was perhaps a private individual who maybe only had, you know, 100 or 200 followers, we could look at who those followers were, and, you know, and then a particular tweet, we could pick that out and see who has actually interacted with it. And as I mentioned in last week's video, Twitter, if you have a Twitter account, you'll know that Twitter also now provides analytics. So you can actually go and drill down, find out how many people have actually seen your tweet. They may not have interacted with it, or they may have interacted with it without us knowing. So it may not be that they've liked it, retweeted it, or responded, but it could be that they've interacted with that tweet by clicking on it and perhaps clicking on the username to find out who you are. So, you know, there are other ways that people can interact. And of course, people might take screenshots, they might share it outside of Twitter, and, you know, we don't have that appearing on these tweets, but, you know, that's something that we're all familiar with, you know, the three dots with the lines that appears at the bottom, the way you can share the tweet. So we don't know who he's saying it to, other than it's the President of the United States, so we can at least say it's the world. But as I say, with private individuals, it's far easier to pin down exactly who a tweet is being addressed to. So then in the next one, we have more of the message. So my endorsement, he also wanted to be Secretary of State. I said, and capitals again, no thanks. He is also largely responsible for the horrendous Iran deal, and exclamation mark. So the use here of capital letters, and again, you know, this is about the particular code of online talk or online text, is that we know within social media that when we see capital letters within social media responses, that implies somebody shouting. So it could be that Donald Trump realises that and he is quite happy to shout, you know, or it could be that actually this is a case of somebody not understanding those traditional conventions of social media use. And you sometimes see this with people who are new to social media, or sometimes sort of older people occasionally do this, where they sort of just reply in capital letters, and you then get other people responding and saying, do you think you could stop shouting? And sometimes them not then understanding what that meant. I think Donald Trump does know what it means, but we also know that he is very fond of shouting. And if you watched the presidential debate that happened in the early hours of Wednesday morning for the time here in the UK on the 30th of September, but it was the 29th for the States, you'll know that in that presidential debate with Joe Biden, that there was quite a lot of shouting going on from all parties involved. Anyway, let's move on to the next tweet there. So we've got a continuation. Hence, I would fully expect Corker to be a negative voice and stand in the way of our great agenda. Didn't have the guts to run. Okay, so we've got this message of Donald Trump running down this Senator Bob Corker, who apparently begged Trump to endorse him, and Donald Trump refusing to, because Trump said that he wouldn't endorse him because he's responsible for a deal that Trump didn't want, and as it says, I'd fully expect Corker to be a negative voice. So Trump clearly doesn't like Corker. Now, one of the great things about Twitter and social media in general is that it allows us, the listener, to respond, the audience to respond. So if we look at the next part of this, what is the effect of Donald Trump saying this or tweeting this? With what effect? And if we look at the next tweet, here's the tweet from Senator Bob Corker. It's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare centre. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning. So we could still apply all of the same aspects, who is saying this, in what medium, what is the content, who's the audience, and so on. And, we can also, particularly with the audience figures, it's interesting to look here at how many times this tweet has been retweeted and how many times it's been liked. And, if we compare that 125 or nearly 126,000 of retweets and nearly 349,000 likes, compare that with Trump's tweets. And if we go back to here, 50,000, 50,000, 55 for the likes, and 13, 11 and 12 for the retweets. So this would lead us to believe that certainly within the world of Twitter, that Bob Corker's response was far more popular than Donald Trump's original tweets. So, and we could sort of now go and look Bob Corker up and see what he's currently doing, and, see what the situation is. Okay, let's move on to another theorist. So this is Dennis McQuail, and this is, as it says, Features of Mass Communication. McQuail's media and mass communication theory is one of the books that's on our reading list, and we're waiting for the library to get the 2020 edition in. I would really, really recommend that you have a look at this, because McQuail is very up to date and very useful. But you can see that originally, towards a sociology of mass communication, which this is from, this dates from 1969, so over 50 years ago, but it is within the lifetime of mass communication, and maybe not so much sort of not the internet certainly, but the beginnings of digital, or the digital revolution, computing and so on. So this is what McQuail says, and I'm not going to sort of read out all of these, but let's have a quick look. So normally mass communication requires complex formal organisations. So that's Twitter, or that is the BBC, or that is a newspaper. So a complex formal organisation. It's not one single person. That's one of the features of mass communication. It's directed towards large audiences. You know, it's not face-to-face communication. It's not one person writing a letter to someone else. It's not even one person texting another. This is something that is designed like newspapers, social media, the television, film, and so on, directed towards large audiences, and they are public. So this content is open to all. And you know that's quite important, particularly when you think of the more recent developments within the press of having aspects of the news put behind paywalls. And certainly there's been some discussion about that fairly recently, particularly with the Conservative government putting some pieces of news within behind a paywall within the Telegraph newspaper earlier on this year, and then after almost immediate condemnation and outcry, the paywall was taken down from those particular news stories, because if it's a public mass communication form, it has to be open to everyone. We all need access to it. You cannot have it as just to certain groups. You know, that's just simply not fair. And as it says, audiences contain many different kinds of people. You know, it's not, we may find that, yes, one particular group are drawn to a particular type of medium. So, you know, we can look, for example, at the demographics of Twitter or the demographics of Instagram, or who reads The Guardian, and so on. But although those people may all enjoy reading or, you know, taking part in those particular media channels, it doesn't mean that others are excluded, or it shouldn't mean that. So as it goes on, it's about being able to contact simultaneously very large numbers of people at a distance. And, you know, separated from one another. That is what the mass media is. This ability to to broadcast, to get information out to people all around the globe, or all around a particular country or area. And that relationship between the communicator, you know, or the writer and their audience, they are managed by, as it says, people who are only known in their public role as communicators. So this is where, for example, we have newsreaders who appear on television. We know them as a newsreader. They are managed, you know, and they are managing the relationship between the communicator, so whoever's written that piece of news, which may not be the television presenter, and the audience. So, you know, they are part of that mass media, just being in that public role. And as it says, you know, this also, the audience for mass communication involves people coming together because of some common interest. So it could be that everybody likes watching Coronation Street, for example. So they don't know one another, the people that all want to watch it. They only have restricted amount of interaction. So, you know, it's that they are all watching television at the same time. But, you know, that they are all fans of this particular programme. So this bit we will do after the break. So let's just leave that one up there for a moment.